Wow, quiet listener, to a calming descent into the distant past. Cool. As the modern world recedes and the sounds of your day soften, we invite you to imagine a time when towering stone fortresses dominated the landscape, the medieval castle. Boon, more than just a symbol of power. These formidable structures were vibrant, often challenging, microcosms of life, teeming with daily routines, unexpected realities, and quiet struggles. Tonight, we gently pull back the heavy oak doors and peer into the surprising truths of medieval castle life. We'll explore the often unglamorous existence within its walls, cover the dramatic story of a queen whose influence stretched across kingdoms, delve into the enigmatic realm of ancient alchemy, and finally cast a quiet light on the contrasting lives of those bound to the land just beyond the castle gates. So, take a slow, deep breath, allow your thoughts to drift, and prepare to be carried into the serene depths of medieval history. Imagine, for a moment, waking not to the warmth of a modern home, but to the pervasive chill of ancient stone. We are stepping back in time, directly into the heart of a medieval castle. A place often romanticized, yet in reality, a remarkably austere and demanding environment. To truly understand the lives lived within these formidable walls, we must peel back the layers of myth and encounter the daily realities of its inhabitants. Your day, were you to find yourself within a medieval keep, would begin long before dawn, perhaps with the distant crow of a rooster or the muffled sounds of servants already stirring. The air would carry the distinct scent of cold stone, damp earth, and the lingering residue of wood smoke from the braziers that offered minimal warmth during the long, dark nights. Privacy, as you understand it, would be a concept utterly alien. Whether you were a lord, a lady, or a humble kitchen servant, your living space, even a private chamber, would be perpetually exposed to drafts, the sounds of activity, and the ever-present chill that seeped from the thick walls. Basic necessities of sanitation were primitive. Imagine simple latrines emptying into moats or their odors, especially on a warm day, a constant reminder of the realities of castle life. Now, consider the daily grind of a servant, the very backbone of the castle's operation. Your day would be one of relentless physical labor. Imagine the clatter and sizzle from the cavernous kitchen, where vast quantities of food were prepared over open fires, requiring constant tending. Hear the rhythmic swish of brooms on straw-covered floors, the clang of buckets as water was hauled from the well. Bucket after heavy bucket for drinking, cooking, and rudimentary washing. Clothes would be scrubbed by hand, often in cold water, and repairs would be a constant necessity. Tending to the lord and lady involved a myriad of tasks. From assisting with dressing and bathing to serving meals and running errands, each task performed with a quiet diligence. The sounds of their work, the chopping, the scrubbing. The quiet footsteps would form a continuous, calming hum throughout the castle's waking hours. Meals within the castle, even for the nobility, were not the varied feasts we might imagine. The diet was largely monotonous, dictated by seasonality, and the challenges of preservation. Imagine the taste of salted meat, perhaps pork or beef, a staple in winter when fresh meat was scarce. Vegetables would often be root vegetables, stored for months, and bread, often a coarse, dark loaf, would be the most common accompaniment to every meal. Fresh fruits were a luxury, available only in season. The greatest challenge was food preservation. Without refrigeration, methods like salting, smoking, and pickling were vital. Yet they dramatically altered the taste and texture of food. Water, drawn from wells or rivers, was often unsafe, leading to the pervasive presence of ale or weak wine as the primary beverage for all ages. Its low alcohol content offering a safer alternative to contaminated water. Good. Finally, let us consider hygiene and health, critical aspects of medieval castle life that were vastly different from our own. Personal bathing was infrequent by modern standards, often limited by the availability of heated water and the sheer effort involved. Imagine a communal bath, perhaps a large wooden tub, shared by several individuals, or a simpler basin and sponge. Cleanliness, as understood in the medieval period, focused more on changing outer garments than on frequent full-body washing. This reality, combined with cramped living conditions and the proximity of animals, created an environment ripe for the spread of disease. Epidemics like dysentery, smallpox, and later, the devastating plague, swept through populations with terrifying speed. Even within the supposedly secure walls of a castle, mortality rates were high, particularly for children. A simple infection could turn deadly, and the lack of advanced medical knowledge meant that many ailments treatable today were often fatal. Life in a medieval castle, for all its imposing grandeur, was a constant negotiation with cold, hunger, bed, and the ever-present specter of illness, a daily struggle for comfort and survival. From the stark realities within the castle walls, we now turn our attention to an extraordinary figure whose life transcended the confines of any single fortress, shaping the very political landscape of medieval Europe. This is the story of Eleanor of Aquitaine, a woman of immense power, sharp intellect, and indomitable spirit, whose journey was marked by 2 royal marriages, a crusade, and an enduring legacy. Her life offers a fascinating glimpse into the possibilities and perils for a powerful woman in an age often dominated by men. Eleanor's early life began in the sophisticated and cultured court of Aquitaine, a vast and wealthy duchy in southwestern France. Imagine a world rich with troubadour poetry, vibrant music, and a blossoming of arts and letters. Born around 1122, she was educated far beyond the typical expectations for women of her time, exposed to philosophy, literature, and the complex intricacies of feudal politics. At the tender age of 15, upon the death of her father, Duke William X, she inherited the immense territories of Aquitaine and This made her, almost overnight, the most sought-after heiress in Europe. A woman whose vast lands made her a king. Imagine the weight of such an inheritance. The immense power and responsibility thrust upon a young woman's shoulders, even before she reached adulthood. Her first marriage, in 1137, was to Louis VII of France. This union instantly made her Queen of France, transforming the political map of Europe. However, their personalities and priorities often clashed. Louis, deeply pious and somewhat austere, found himself frequently at odds with Eleanor's more spirited, politically astute, and culturally refined nature. The marriage produced no male heir, a significant point of tension in a medieval monarchy. After a tumultuous 15 years, during which Eleanor even accompanied Louis on the Second Crusade, their marriage was annulled in 1152 on grounds of consanguinity. This was a bold and unusual move for a medieval monarch, demonstrating Eleanor's growing determination to control her own destiny. Just 8 weeks after her annulment, Eleanor made an astonishing and politically audacious second marriage. Her beau was Henry Plantagenet, Duke of Normandy, and Count of Anjou, a dynamic, ambitious, and much younger man who would soon become Henry II of England. Imagine the shockwaves this union sent through the courts of Europe. Suddenly, vast swaths of France, already under Henry's control, were united with Eleanor's Aquitaine, creating an Angevin empire that dwarfed the lands controlled directly by the French king. As Queen of England and Duchess of Aquitaine, Eleanor's influence on European politics became immense. She bore Henry 8 children, including future kings Richard the Lionheart and John, further solidifying her dynasty. Her court became renowned for its intellectual vibrancy and cultural sophistication, attracting poets, scholars, and artists from across the continent. However, her relationship with Henry II, though initially passionate, became increasingly strained. Their powerful personalities clashed, and Eleanor found herself chafing under Henry's attempts to curtail her independent authority over Aquitaine. In 1173, she actively supported her sons in a rebellion against their father, a daring move that ultimately failed. As a consequence, Henry imprisoned her for 16 long years, a period of profound isolation and political eclipse. Imagine the fortitude required to endure such confinement. A powerful queen reduced to a royal prisoner. Her eventual release came in 1189. Henry II's death, and the ascension of her favorite son, Richard the Lionheart, to the throne. Despite her advanced age, Eleanor's political acumen remained undimmed. She became an indispensable advisor to Richard, serving as his regent during his absence on the Third Crusade and skillfully managing the Angevin Empire. She even journeyed across Europe to negotiate Richard's release from captivity. After Richard's death, she continued to wield influence during the reign of her youngest son, King John, until her peaceful death in 1204, at the remarkable age of 82. Eleanor of Aquitaine's legacy is immense. She was a patron of the arts, a political force, a mother of kings, and a woman who, through intelligence and an unyielding will, navigated and often shaped the turbulent currents of medieval power, leaving an indelible mark on the history of both France and England. Her story reminds us that even within the confines of historical norms, extraordinary individuals can forge their own paths, quietly shifting the very foundations of their world. Having explored the grand narratives of royalty and power, we now turn our gaze to a more mysterious and often misunderstood corner of the medieval world: the secret practice of alchemy. This wasn't merely a precursor to modern chemistry. It was a complex blend of philosophy, and mystical belief, pursued by individuals often on the fringes of accepted knowledge. Its ultimate aim was grand indeed: the transmutation of base metals into gold, and the discovery of an elixir that could grant eternal life or perfect health. The fabled philosopher S. Stone. Imagine the quiet, often secluded chamber of an alchemist. The air would be heavy with strange odors, sulfurous fumes, the metallic temps of heated substances, and perhaps the earthy smell of herbs. To understand alchemy is to recognize its multifaceted nature. It operated on several levels simultaneously. On one hand, it was a practical pursuit involving the heating, distillation, and combination of various substances, laying some very early groundwork for experimental chemistry. On the other, it was deeply philosophical, viewing the transformation of matter as a reflection of spiritual purification and the perfection of the soul. Medieval alchemists were deeply immersed in both the physical and the metaphysical, believing that the universe held hidden sympathies and connections that could be unlocked through careful observation and secretive processes. The alchemical laboratory itself would be a fascinating, if sometimes dangerous, place. Imagine crude, yet ingenious, equipment crafted from glass, clay, and metal. There would be retort flasks designed for distillation, their long necks allowing vapors to condense. Hear the gentle bubbling of liquids in alembics, the soft hiss of heated crucibles over glowing coals. The tools were rudimentary, but the precision required was immense. Alchemists worked with an array of often toxic materials: mercury, lead, arsenic, sulfur, and various acids. Imagine the careful handling, the delicate measurements, and the constant awareness of the inherent dangers, often leading to illness or even death through exposure. Their experiments were not always safe, and their knowledge of chemical reactions was based more on observation and trial than on a fundamental understanding of atomic structure. Throughout the medieval period, a number of prominent figures emerged, their names now echoing quietly in the annals of intellectual history, associated with alchemical thought. Consider Roger Bacon, an English Franciscan friar of the 13th century, often credited with advocating empirical observation, and experimentation, pursuits that aligned with alchemical methodology even as he grappled with theological doctrines. Imagine him poring over texts, conducting experiments in a secluded corner of his monastery, seeking not only spiritual truth but also practical knowledge through the manipulation of matter. Another name, though often shrouded in legend, is Nicholas Flamel, a 14th century Parisian scribe and bookseller, while later legends credited him with discovering the Philosopher's Stone and achieving immortality. Historical records suggest he was indeed a real person whose wealth later fueled the alchemical myths around him. These figures, and many others, contributed to a rich body of alchemical theory, often expressed in cryptic symbols and allegorical language, designed to protect their secrets and, perhaps, to hint at deeper spiritual truths. Despite its mystical aims and sometimes fantastical claims, alchemy's legacy extends beyond the mere pursuit of gold. Imagine the patient, painstaking work of heating, cooling, dissolving, and crystallizing substances. These practical manipulations, repeated countless times, inadvertently led to genuine scientific discoveries. Alchemists perfected techniques for distillation, created new alloys in metallurgy, developed early forms of chemical apparatus, gained rudimentary knowledge of various compounds and their reactions. Some historians even suggest that alchemical texts contained early insights into concepts like the conservation of mass. While they may not have found the Philosopher's Stone, their ceaseless experimentation laid essential groundwork for the later emergence of modern chemistry, revealing a fascinating and complex chapter in the history of human intellectual curiosity, relentless pursuit of understanding the material world. Having journeyed from the noble's castle and the alchemist's hidden laboratory, we now gently descend from these elevated spheres to the very foundation of medieval society. We turn our attention to the vast majority of the population, those whose lives were inextricably linked to the soil, bound by duty and custom. The medieval serf, their existence was one of persistent labor, limited freedoms, and an enduring connection to the rhythms of the earth, offering a stark and humbling contrast to the lives we have previously explored. To understand the serf's life is to comprehend the feudal system, the overarching social and economic structure of medieval Europe. Imagine a vast tapestry woven with threads of hierarchy and obligation. At the top were the monarchs, granting land to powerful nobles, who in turn parceled out smaller holdings to lesser nobles and knights. At the very bottom of this intricate system were the serfs, peasants who were, crucially, tied to the land. They were not slaves in the strict sense, as they could not be bought or sold independently of the land, but they were not free. Their freedom of movement was severely restricted. They could not leave the manor without the lord's permission, and their status was hereditary, passing from parent to child. Their lives were defined by a reciprocal, if often exploitative, relationship. The lord provided protection and access to land, and in return, the serf provided labor and loyalty. Now, Imagine a year in the life of a peasant family. A ceaseless cycle dictated by the seasons and the demands of the land. Cog. The early spring would bring the arduous task of plowing, often with a heavy wooden plow pulled by oxen, turning over the dents. Then came the planting of vital crops. Wheat, barley, oats, and rye. The very sustenance of their lives. Summer was a time of constant weeding and tending, followed by the most critical period, the harvests. Imagine the entire village, men, women, and children, toiling from dawn till dusk under the hot sun, cutting grain with sickles, gathering it into sheaves, and threshing it to separate the precious kernels. This was a race against time and weather, for a bad harvest could mean widespread hunger and even starvation in the long winter months. The constant struggle against famine, disease, and the whims of nature was an ever-present backdrop to their existence. Life on the manor was also heavily burdened by the Lord's demands. Imagine the various rents, typically paid not in money, but in produce. A portion of your harvest, eggs from your chickens. Perhaps a specific number of days spent working directly on the Lord's land, known as labor. Beyond these, there were often other obligations. A fee to grind your grain at the Lord's mill. To bake your bread in his oven or to use his forge. And, of course, there was the tithe to the church, a tenth of your produce or income, a spiritual obligation that also represented a significant material burden. These demands, collected with varying degrees of strictness by the Lord's bailiffs, meant that a significant portion of the serfs' labor and produce went not to their own family's comfort, but to the sustenance of the feudal system. Yet, amidst this relentless cycle of labor and obligation, there were moments of respite and even quiet resistance. Imagine the simple joys of village festivities, marking the changing seasons or religious holidays. These were rare but vital opportunities for communal gathering, feasting, dancing, and storytelling. Greatest holidays, like Christmas or Easter, offered a break from work and a chance for spiritual solace within the village church. While overt rebellion was rare and often brutally suppressed, small acts of defiance like working slowly on the Lord's land or subtly circumventing onerous rules, were more common expressions of agency. And occasionally, when the burdens became truly unbearable, there were peasant revolts, desperate uprisings born of starvation and oppression, like the Peasants' Revolt in England or the Jacquerie in France, though often short-lived and crushed by military force. These moments were stark reminders that even the most subjugated populations could, for a time, rise up against their fate. The life of a medieval serf was one of immense hardship, but also one of deep communal bonds, quiet resilience, and an unwavering connection to the land that sustained them. Conclusion. As the echoes of medieval castle life, the drama of a powerful queen, the mysteries of ancient alchemy, and the quiet struggles of the serf begin to fade into the soft hum of the night. We hope this journey has offered you a calming glimpse into a world both distant and deeply human. We've explored the cold stone walls and demanding routines of the castle, the resilience required for daily survival, and then watched as Eleanor of Aquitaine, a woman of formidable will, shaped kingdoms. We delved into the intriguing, often enigmatic world of the alchemist, where the pursuit of gold and eternal life inadvertently laid the groundwork for future scientific understanding. Finally, we settled into the enduring rhythms of the serf's existence. A life of relentless labor balanced by moments of simple community and unwavering connection to the earth. Each of these threads, woven together, forms a richer tapestry of the medieval period, revealing a world of contrasting experiences, quiet determination, and surprising depths. As these historical details gently recede, allow the steady cadence of the past to lull you further into tranquility. Coo! May the distant sounds of the castle, the rustle of ancient manuscripts, and the quiet turning of the earth now blend into a soothing melody, guiding you peacefully toward the embrace of deep and restful sleep. Good night.